What if Kahhori reshaped the world? Hello, everyone, and welcome to All Things Watched, and welcome to our official after show for the brand new What If series, Season 2, and this is Episode 6. And so this episode introduces a brand new character known as Kahhori, and so we're not going to waste any time. Let's just go ahead and jump right in. And this story actually begins during the dark times of Asgard, known as Ragnarok. Now, according to the Watcher, at the very beginning of this episode, the Watcher does say that in most multiversal or in most universes and most realities, Ragnarok always happens to Asgard. But in this reality, which introduces Kahhori, this reality it happens a little bit earlier than normal. And so right off the bat, we see Odin holding the Tesseract, or also known as the Space Infinity Stone or the Space Stone, and then it jumps right into Surtur, who is right at the point where he is literally about to destroy Asgard, and he has the sword, and he, shoves it right, basically stabs it into the earth, and Odin is standing below him with the Tesseract, and as you can see, the Tesseract explodes along with Asgard. However, in this reality, the Tesseract does survive, but it seems like it's severely damaged, and so the Tesseract ends up finding its way down to Earth, and then we just automatically go straight in to the opening sequence of the Watcher talking about, the what if. It goes space, time, reality, and whatnot. And then as soon as we get past the opening sequence, the show doesn't waste any time, and it goes directly into Kahhori's world. And honestly, it is absolutely beautiful right from this very first scene. It's very breathtaking. The visuals, the lighting, you can see that Kahhori comes from this Native American background. She's a part of this sort of native indigenous tribe, and you can see that they're all very peaceful, living in harmony, working together to try and survive, which is really nice. Whether you like Marvel or you hate Marvel, whether you have been enjoying Phase 4 and 5 or not, you can't argue that Marvel always does a great job with its representation. Miss Marvel was a great example of that, all about Kamala Khan, who came from this Muslim background, and honestly, I thought Marvel handled that quite well, and I think they did the same here with Kahhori and her backstory and her origins. I really think they really nailed the visuals and the cultural aspects of the character and of the origin story. So then we get a really cool zoomed out shot, which is basically like a panning shot, which shows the entire village and how they live, and sort of gives you a bird's eye view of what it looks like. They're inside of these like massive tents, and they're fully enclosed, and of course this is obviously for protection, to protect against wildlife, and of course to protect against other predators besides animals, which we'll get into here in a few minutes. But then finally, in the next panel then, or the next scene, we're finally actually introduced to Kahhori, and I'm not really 100% sure if you pronounce her name as Kahhori, but I think the H might actually be sound, or might not. You might not pronounce the H, so we're just going to call her Kahhori for now, for the sake of this video. But anyway, she's here with her sister Wata. And it was really nice interaction here. You can tell that they really love each other, and they're basically going around here and exploring. And I think it's also worth noting as well that this is the first time, by the way, that Kahhori is actually introduced. Like, Kahhori has no comics, she's not in any other anime, she's not in any other MCU projects whatsoever, or any comic books. This is literally the very first time we've seen this character. Kahhori is a brand new character that was written for this series, What If, and I hope she ends up going into live action eventually. The biggest complaint I had about this episode was that it wasn't long enough, but either way, they did a great job with her here. So anyways, her and her sister Wati, or Wata, I believe her name is, Wata, are exploring, and they end up coming across this forest, which they're not really supposed to be going into, but they go in there anyway, and they end up finding this lake, which is supposedly what is known, supposedly forbidden. They're not supposed to be at this lake, but they go in there, and Kahhori basically says everything of what we're thinking. As soon as I seen this lake, the first thing that came to my mind was, really, this is a forbidden lake. It just looks like a normal lake. There's literally ducks here, and then Kahhori literally says that out loud. So it was really clever on the writing that they actually made the character say exactly what we were thinking. There's nothing special about this lake, and it really doesn't make sense as to why it might be, forbidden. But I will say that the ducks look really nice. They look really nice animated. They get a really nice green, enough green to stand out and make them noticeable, but not enough. It's not too green, but not enough green. The lighting looks really good, and it looks really well done. And I really like this. I also want to give, I think it's worth noting as well, that this entire episode is actually done with their actual native language, and I believe at the very end of the episode they end up speaking Spanish, because the bad guys of this is obviously the white man who invades their land and destroys their village and all that stuff. And they come from over in Europe, and of course they speak Spanish. So there do be some Spanish language toward the end of this episode, but most of this episode is actually spoken, I believe, in the native tongue. And I think Marvel puts a little disclaimer at the end of the video as well, where they say that they actually reached out to the Mohawk tribe. I believe they called them the Mohawk tribe, and they actually helped them. The Mohawk tribe actually helped them, with this series or with this episode, sorry, and actually sort of taught them, the ways of the natives. So anyways, while Kahhori and Wata are out here, unfortunately, then these other invaders end up coming, and of course they literally sets everything on fire, which is very similar to the shot that we seen earlier of the overview, seeing the whole panel of the village and how peaceful it was and everything. And now the moment we get these invaders, then all of a sudden it's complete destruction. Everything's on fire, and of course the next panel as well, and the next scene is very devastating, because you can see all the natives, and they're sort of like they're rounded up, and they're captured, and who knows what else, maybe beaten or starved or whatever there is going on there. It's not a very pretty scene. And I also really like how they did it, or at least in my opinion, I thought the writing was done in a way where they actually felt like aliens. Because even though Kahhori is not here fighting, we're not seeing the Chitauri or any Inhumans or any Kree or Skrull aliens or anything here. These are just people fighting people, but it still feels very alienated. These invaders are very much invaders, and they come from a very different world, even though technically, they live in the same world. It does very much feel like an alien invasion, and I guess to some degree they are sort of alien. This is not their hometown, this is not their land, and so, I just felt like the episode does a really good job at making a distinction between these two cultures and between these two people, and it really, to me at least, it really made the natives feel very alienated, because it really feels like they're being invaded by actual aliens. So in the meantime, Kahhori and Wata ends up running away, obviously, to try to find safety, and they actually end up falling through this hole or some form of cellar or hole in the ground or something, which ends up leading them to this cave. And of course they end up coming across and finding the real Forbidden Lake, which is not the fake one with ducks. This one's actually glowing blue. Of course, we know that's because the power of this lake is, the blue is coming from the power of the Tesseract and whatnot. And so this soldier is in here, and he's actually about to find and potentially hurt Wata, which is Kahhori's sister. But Kahhori ends up coming out and, distracting the soldier, and actually ends up getting shot. And of course, once she gets shot, and it actually shows blood too, which I was a little bit surprised about, especially considering that they were actually introducing this character, and this is a brand new character. I was surprised that they showed the blood, just for the sake of keeping it family friendly. I figured they would want, really young children to be able to watch, but the blood is only for a second, really, so it's probably not that big of a deal. But still, they do show the blood all the same. And so Kahhori ends up falling into the water, into the lake, and as you can see, she starts to slowly sink, and she sinks down towards the Tesseract, which is at the bottom of the lake, and it ends up transporting her to this completely different world. And of course, when she comes to, she can tell right away that this world is different. And as you can see like the little lights and stuff in the dirt and in the soil. and whatnot. And really, this world, well, in the episode, they call it the Sky World. But this Sky World is very majestic, very magical, very colorful, very vibrant. Exactly what you would think if you, ended up going through the Tesseract and going to this very, I guess from their perspective, almost like an ancestral type of realm. But either way, when Kahhori, gets transported to this world, she ends up absorbing some of the powers of the Tesseract, and it ends up giving her some abilities. Now, what I did appreciate was that at this point of the episode, the Watcher actually intervenes and starts to try and give a description as to how or why these people who go to this lake or gets transported ends up with these powers and abilities. But I thought that it was a little bit of a, it was a little bit I would say wasn't really answered very consistently. According to the Watcher, is that when this Tesseract was stabbed by Surtur during the events of Ragnarok, it ended up basically taking two lives. It almost like the Tesseract ended up having two purposes. One purpose was that it was still the Tesseract, the Space Stone. It was able to give powers and sort of manipulate space. But then the Watcher says that in this reality, it also gave the ability to, it also had the ability to give its powers to really strong warriors, especially with these types of tribes that were suffering and going through, really harsh times. But to me, this was still a little bit of a silly answer because through my mind, I was just thinking that the Tesseract is not really, not really God, so the Tesseract can't actually tell personalities and whatnot. So the way that I chalked it up, even maybe a little bit better than what the Watcher said, was I just sort of looked at it in the sense of the last person who actually used the Tesseract and actually held it and manipulated it was actually Odin. And if you can remember, every time Odin wanted to sort of teach a lesson, or whenever he did something like, say, with Thor, in the first Thor, maybe he strips Thor away from all of his powers and takes his hammer and casts him down to the earth. And what you can remember is he actually tells Thor, or he sort of puts a curse on Thor's hammer, and then he says, whoever be worthy of holding this hammer would be worthy of the power of Thor. And so that's sort of how I just justified the Tesseract giving power to these warriors, is I just sort of looked at it as in the sense of, well, the Tesseract has the ability to give power, but it only gives power to those who are worthy. And I just sort of, tell myself that maybe Odin put that curse on there. And the only reason why I think of it that way is because later on in the episode, the invaders, the white men will end up going to this sky world, but they don't have the power. So it's almost like the Tesseract can choose who has it and who doesn't have it. And I just think that it makes more sense to say that Odin was the one who put the curse on it, as opposed to the Tesseract itself having the capability of reading someone's heart. So I think it's like a combination of both. It's the Tesseract having the ability, but also it's Odin saying whoever is worthy of the power will grant the power. And to me, that just made a little bit more sense than just the Tesseract has the ability to give powers, to anyone that it chooses. I just don't feel like the Tesseract would actually choose. The Space Stone is a very powerful weapon, but it's only a weapon. It's only a stone. It's not alive. It's not organic, technically. And so then we get to the next scene, and we get a really cool bunch of shots here of all these different tribes and people. I think some people that Kahhori did know, and also some people that maybe she didn't know. There's just a whole bunch of people here, and they're all working together. But what this sort of sequence does really well is it sort of highlights the abilities that she now has. I would say that she's kind of similar to someone like the Green Lantern, but not really. She's probably a little bit more powerful than the Green Lantern because she is able to jump really high and run really fast. But really, I would say ultimately the power is that she has the ability to sort of manipulate space itself. So she's able to move faster through space. Eventually at the end of the episode, it seems like they learn how to be able to actually teleport. Like to go from one place on the Earth to another, because they ends up confronting the Queen at the end of the episode. So you can tell that she has the ability of space manipulation, but it's still very similar to Green Lantern, I think, to some degree. And so she's going through the village, going through the tribe, and we see all these really cool powers and all these different things that these tribe members are using. And so in the meantime, we go back to the actual village, and of course the invaders are here now, and they're getting very angry, and they're they got their weapons pulled on the natives and stuff. And ultimately, I think what's going on here is that they are trying to figure out, and I'm pretty sure that that guy was named, his name is Gonzalo, I believe, and so he's trying to find the Fountain of Youth, which is basically that lake where they all got their powers, the Forbidden Lake, because from his perspective, it's known as the Fountain of Youth. So he thinks that if he can get there, he's able to get these powers and sort of become immortal and live forever. But that's just not true. And so that's why he's doing all this. That's why they're invading. Well, besides the obvious reasons, obviously they are invading the land. They want the resources and all that stuff. But I think ultimately this one specific person is looking for the Fountain of Youth because he wants to live forever. Now, in the meantime, when we go back here to what they call the Sky World, because the only way in here is through teleportation, and when you're teleported in, you fall down from the sky. This scene in particular, to me, had a lot of vibes from Black Panther, a little bit of Wakanda, but also a little bit of Avatar, because in those movie avatars, the actual species, the Avatar species, are actually able to sort of survive and thrive and live from their environment, but it's almost like their environment is actually symbiotic to them. It's not only that they're drinking the water or eating the food, but they're also actually talking to the plants. They're actually talking, and actually connecting to the air and the water and all these things, and it's a very symbiotic relationship. And so I sort of got that vibe here in this scene, even though it's not quite that far. They're not literally talking to the trees, but you get what I'm saying. It reminded me a lot of Avatar, and that's sort of the feeling that I got when I seen this sequence, and I thought it was really cool. And so now you start to see, Kahhori using her abilities a little bit. She's finally starting to manipulate space. She's able to jump really high, and then we come to a really cool scene then with a bunch of these what look like giant buffalo type things. And as you can see, Kahhori is running so fast that she has like a string of light behind her. She's basically like the Flash here. Maybe not quite as fast, but she is moving at a really high speed rate. And of course, the rest of the tribe that's running with her, they sort of warn her. They say, hey, be careful, you don't want to go too crazy. And she asks them, well, how do I stop? And they say, literally, you just stop. So I thought that was funny. But she ends up getting herself stuck in front of the herd. And then we get this really cool slow motion, very visually stunning scene where Kahhori actually uses her powers now to save herself by flipping the animal over, because if she doesn't, it's going to run her over. But the animal doesn't actually get hurt, it lands on all fours and keeps going. But it was just a really cool scene and very visually stunning to see it. I really like the visuals of this episode, but also I really liked the choice of having it as a wide shot like this, and that was really cool. And I think it's also worth noting as well that I forgot to mention earlier, when she first comes into this sky world, the person that she meets is a character known as Atarax, I believe, or Atarax, I believe is how you pronounce his name. But he actually tells her that time does not work the same here in the sky world, the same as it does in the real world. Because I know that a lot of people, I've seen a few people have some small nitpicks as to, they didn't really agree with how fast Kahhori, was able to master her abilities and her power. But that's sort of how I chalk that up. I just think about the fact that the other guy told her that time works differently here. So even though for us it probably seems like she's only here for a few days, or like one day or a couple of seconds, or maybe even a few hours, who knows really, she might have been there for a really long time, because according to the other guy, time works differently. And so they end up going back to their homes and whatnot here in the sky world. And of course this is where the invaders end up finding their way in, and now they actually were teleported in here from the Tesseract as well. And that's why I was saying earlier, they don't have abilities, but the natives do. And so for me at least, rather than saying that the Tesseract chose certain people for it, I just sort of chalked it up as them not being worthy of the power, so they don't they're not able to achieve that power, more so because of Odin and what he done as sort of a final sacrifice when he was being killed by Surtur during the events of Ragnarok. I like to just chalk it up by saying he put the curse on the Tesseract for in case somebody else found it, and of course these invaders are not worthy of the power, so they don't get it. But once again, very beautiful scene here with Kahhori, and she's really mastering her talents. It's also important to remember as well, not only is she mastering her talents, but she also has a lot of motivation, a lot of ambition. It makes sense that she's learning so fast because of how much she has to lose. Her little sister is still in the real world, and she doesn't even know what's going on with her, and so it makes no surprise as to how ambitious she is and how motivated she is. So after they have this cool little sequence here, and she sort of disarms these invaders and sort of puts them down. I don't think she kills them, but you know what I mean. She just sort of handles them. Then we get a really cool scene where she ends up taking the portal up in the sky, and she brings it down to their level so that they can all escape and go back to the real world, so that she can help her sister and fight off these alien invaders, or quote unquote alien invaders. And I really liked one specific line that Kahhori says here, because her friends, especially Atarax, he tells her, that this place that they're in is very magical, is very beautiful, they're very fortunate to be here because they're away from violence, they're away from the rest of the world and all that stuff. But Kahhori says, well, this is not paradise, this is actually a prison. And I just thought that was really interesting choice of words, because it's really good for character development. It shows us the type of character that Kahhori is, because remember, we have nothing else to go by. This is the first time we've ever seen her, so I just really, little details like that I thought was really good that they put that in there, because it shows how true and how pure of a heart she has. And so she ends up going through the portal, but not before giving the speech. She tells them all, if you think you're worthy of this power or worthy of this place, then you would follow me and help me save our people. And so she goes in through the portal, and she reappears here in the lake, the Forbidden Lake, and she is actually the very first person to actually come back from the Sky World. And of course, by the time she gets back, everything is already destroyed and on fire and burning. But I gotta say that she looks really cool here. Her eyes are glowing. The tattoos and stuff are glowing. The tribal tats and all that kind of stuff. And it just looks so cool. I love the type of power that she has, and I really like the origin of it as well. It really makes sense that she got it through the Tesseract. But they really look cool when they use their power. And so she ends up going back to the beach now, and she basically all the invaders just rage war on her now, and so she's just fighting as much as she can and trying to keep up with it for as long as she can. And we get some really cool fight sequences here. Really cool animation style. The animation is very bright and very vibrant, but it also really fits the tone of the story. And I think the only thing that was even better than the characters and better than the story itself was the actual music, the score. That the actual music that's playing during the sequence is a very almost like a choir, almost churchy, religious, almost very like a spiritual type music. And it just it really suited the story and really helps bring out emotion. And she's here because she's literally fighting for not only her life, but she's fighting for her people, and she's fighting for her home and for her land. And so, as you can see, she really demonstrates some true power here. She's just fighting literally probably hundreds of people here at once, and she's just ripping all through them. And then of course eventually the chief, or the leader, I guess we should say, the captain of this of the invaders, ends up telling the boats and the ships to start using the cannons. And once again, we just see a really cool force of strength, show of strength here from Kahhori. She uses her powers to create this force field, blocking all the cannonballs from hitting her. But unfortunately, one of them eventually does break through, and I'm not really sure why. If maybe she's just not strong enough yet, maybe she's too new, or maybe it's just she ends up losing focus, or she ends up becoming distracted somehow. But either way, one of the cannonballs actually breaks through and ends up hitting her, which was brutal. Even looked like it hurt. And of course, then the captain ends up coming over, and he puts his sword to her and really is about to kill her, literally, when probably one of the more emotional scenes in anything that we've seen in Marvel, probably even since Endgame. This is a very emotional scene, is that her tribe ends up coming to help her, but it really put me in mind of in Avengers Endgame when all the portals open up and, Captain America puts his shield on, he's beaten and battered, and he's about to make his final stand against Thanos, potentially even going to be killed, but he does it anyway, and then all of a sudden on the radio, all you hear is, to your left, which was Falcon, and they all come back, and it's really an emotional scene. Well, I feel like here in this episode, this scene right here, when her tribe ends up coming back to help her, I felt that that was also equally, emotional, because you're like, oh man, you're really rooting for this character, this brand new character, Kahhori, and she's giving it her all, and just like Captain America, she's putting on her shield and making one last stand, and then all of a sudden her tribe shows up from the sky world and they end up helping her. And also the sequence here, the fighting sequences and the action sequence, was just so cool. They slowed down the time here, it was slow motion, and once again they had that very spiritual music playing in the background. And I thought it was really funny with this with the main bad guy as well, the captain. When he falls, nobody hits him or anything like that, but everybody keeps running over him and they just keep stepping on him, which is very symbolic, but also a show of defeat as well. And so once the tribe comes, then her best friend Atarax comes, and they have a really cool moment where they actually bump heads, which is something that oftentimes native tribes really did. It was like a show of friendship, a show of support, and as you can see in the background, all the other tribe members are still running past them, and they still got that blue streak, just because they're all so fast. They're like the Flash, and it was just, once again, it was just such an emotional moment to see that they did have each other's back. She was an inspiration, not just to her tribe, but even to us, the viewers. To me, she's very much like a Captain America type character. She has that heart. She has that that ability to inspire you to want to do the right thing. And so I really liked that scene when they were here butting heads, and it's just really cool to see how they have each other's back. And then we get to pretty well the final sequences here, then, or at least the final action sequences, where you see all the tribe from the Sky People, going at the boats, and they all got these red, or sorry, not red, they all got these blue streaks coming from them because they're moving so fast, and they all got the power of the Tesseract, and they literally just obliterate everybody there. And then we get a really cool slow motion sequence here with Kahhori, and she's jumping down because by now she has already found her sister, and she's already saved her sister, and her sister Wata has also been introduced to now her new friend from the Sky World, Atarax, and it's just really cool interaction. They get along great, and I have no doubts in my mind that hopefully all those characters will return eventually. And basically they end the battle. And when you're getting to the final sequence of the battle, the Watcher starts to narrate again, which once again draws out the emotion. It's just really good editing and really good directing and extremely good writing. And it's like, I don't know why, like, where are these writers for all the other projects? We need these people to be writing the movies as well as the TV shows and all that stuff. And then, of course, once the conflict is fixed here over on their lands and they get rid of all the invaders, then we end up going back over to Europe where the Queen is, and then now Kahhori uses that teleportation, uses her ability to teleport, and takes a few tribe members with her, and they actually come here and actually confront the Queen now. And she literally says to the Queen, hey, I'm not here. I don't want any conflict. I don't want your throne. I don't even want to take you off the throne. And as you can see, because you have to read the whole show, because it's not actually in English other than the Watcher, what the Watcher says is English, she actually says to her, she says, we believe our health depends on your health, which once again has that sort of Captain America vibe, very, we need to work together, we need to stick together. And I just, it's just really cool. And so she ends up destroying the throne, the chair at least that the queen sits in, just because of how aggressive the queen is. And then the very final scene, which I was actually quite surprised about, is when another portal opens and we end up getting Doctor Strange, Supreme Strange, I believe this is, ends up making an appearance, and he actually says something very unique. He says, "You saved the world, global peace in record time," or whatever it was he says. But then he says, "I have been looking for you for a very long time." So I'm not really 100% sure what that means from Strange, because we're only just introduced to Kahhori, but by him saying something like that sort of alludes to the idea that maybe he has known about Kahhori for quite some time. So I'm not really 100% sure, why or how he's been looking for her, unless he knows about her from another universe, maybe. I'm not really sure how that ties in with Doctor Strange, but I have no doubts in my mind that she will be in another episode before this one is finished. She'll definitely be in either the next episode, or maybe even episode the finale episode. And I do think that she'll be recruited as well to the multiversal Avengers. I have no doubts in my mind that the Watcher will recruit her, and I can't see why not. She could be totally like the Captain America, have that Captain America stance for this new Avengers team. She can be the heart and the soul sort of the team. She has that purity. She knows the difference between right and wrong. She has a lot of pain, a lot of loss, and I have no doubts that she'll not only return, but I think that I think she will be on that team, and I think she'll bring a lot to the team, and she'll keep the team grounded. But overall, in terms of the episode, I thought it was a great episode. Once again, I thought it was very emotional. It was very visually stunning. The animation was great. It was a really cool way of introducing a brand new character that's not only not in the comics, but also not in any other anime or any other movies. This is literally a brand new character. So I thought it was kind of risky for them to do something like this in a What If series, but at the same time, where else would you do it? I mean, there's no greater opportunity to introduce new characters than in this type of series, such as What If. So I'm very curious to see where this character will go next, or at the very least where she'll end up next. I'd be curious to see if she's going to be in Secret Wars. Echo starts in another week or two, and that's only 5 episodes, and so Echo also comes from sort of a Native American background, so I'd be curious to see if there's any connections between Kahhori and Echo. I would love to see it, so that when, I have no doubts that Echo is going to end up going back to her traditional root. So I would love to see somehow Kahhori be mentioned in that TV show Echo, whether it's be like Kahhori is like a legend, or someone maybe that inspires Echo or something like that. I don't really know how it will connect, but I'm really excited to see it when it does. And I can't wait to see the connection between her and Doctor Strange and all that good stuff. And overall, I absolutely love this episode, and I can't wait to see the final 2 episodes. So let me know in the comment section below if you've seen this episode, and if you'd like to tell me why or why not. If you like this episode, click that subscribe button. And until the next one, take care.